the Big Daddy may look imposing, but he's a gentle giant. Do you know all he does for Rapture? These metal jets are the hands that maintain Rapture, digging the foundation out of the seabed and guiding structural supports into place. Where do these metal mysteries come from? Sorry, chum, that's Orion Industries' trade secret. Now you know.
The Burial at Sea DLCs of Bioshock Infinite are messy, to say the least. Just like the base game. They wrote themselves into a corner here, with the idea of infinite universes from the base game, and things just get worse here. The world of Rapture enters the fold. The events of Burial at Sea take away from elements of the first Bioshock. Save for a few changes like no weapon limit, most of the gameplay issues with Infinite carry over. The Stealth Edition, while welcome, needs some more tweaking for a better experience and is pretty easy to break. While it is nice to play Elizabeth, a bunch of asspulls had to be made story-wise to make it work. So a few notes before beginning. There are going to be spoilers throughout for Burial at Sea, the base game of Bioshock Infinite, and to a lesser extent, the first two Bioshocks. This video focuses more on the plot and notable moments of Burial at Sea. My video on Bioshock Infinite goes deeper into the gameplay and other elements I usually cover in videos. Thanks again to Dustin Marbles for the animated video intro. She did the animated intros for my Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite videos. I discovered her animated Bioshock videos through Mr. Algorithm. Go check out her work. Check out the card here and links in the description and pinned comment.
Takes a cold son of a bitch to do that to a living person.
What's that?
Burial at sea.
You read your residency contract with Orion Industries? In perpetuity, we're all buried at sea.
Burial at Sea takes place on New Year's Eve 1958, right before the start of the Rapture Civil War. Elizabeth is hiring Booker to find a young girl named Sally, who Booker thought dead. Enjoy this film noir feel while you can, because it mostly disappears after this, beyond how Elizabeth acts.
Well, you gotta name this?
Elizabeth. You can call me Elizabeth.
Too bad. The film noir style is underutilized in games. Games like Max Payne or LA Noire made use of it. Upcoming games like Fallen Aces are using it. Rapture is a great place to run with it. The timeline, the setting, the themes, it's all there for the picking.
How long have you been in Rapture?
Let's just say I don't get out much.
You've got eyes and ears, don't you?
If I wanted to share my life story, Mr. DeWitt, I would write my memoirs.
To say this femme fatale look of Elizabeth is popular is a bit of an understatement. It's a look that has launched who knows how many not safe for work and lewd works. Ken Levine has made mention of this fact. Elizabeth is much colder here. Her voice is more husky as well.
Can you turn it up? Oh, it's so intoxicating, but also powerful and masculine. Oh yes, one feels the urge to surrender.
Remind me again why her voice actress Courtney Draper has done next to nothing since Bioshock Infinite? She could have voiced some of the many roles that went to someone like a Laura Bailey, who, funny enough, played Lady Comstock in Bioshock Infinite. Elizabeth is a bit more feisty here as well.
Get your hands off me! Might be best if we were gone when he wakes up.
You know this scene awoke something in some Discord mod. Like the beginning of Infinite with Columbia, we get a walking simulator portion to explore Rapture, a city on the cusp of civil war. It's fascinating to see things before it's ruined. Listening on these conversations does some decent world building, although they could have used a few more unique models.
What do they even look like under those suits?
What you mean? They're just some kind of machine?
To cut the tallest flower up there. Do something exceptional? Those parasites resent it, condemn it, or worse yet, take credit for themselves.
Nice finally consorting with the equally talented, eh?
Dr. Steinman told me he uses my picture to judge facial symmetry.
Darling, that line actually work on anyone before closing time.
You know, Ken Levine should just make a walking simulator at some point. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this genre, but they do a good job of it here. Same with the beginning of the base game, as well as part 2 of Burial at Sea. Plus, it wouldn't take them as long as whatever he's been working on since then. It's nice here to see plasmids used in their more civilized intentions. We get some time here with Cohen, but like the film noir feel, it's all too brief. Which is too bad. This part of Burial at Sea could have been built around him. Fort Frolic, the level that features him in the first Bioshock, is a highlight of the series. Hell, it's one of the most memorable levels I played. His presence plays a part in that being the case. Instead, he's mostly used here to just move the plot along. I'll note the nice touch of having Waltz of the Flowers here on the accordion.
No. Why do you fail in this fashion? To embarrass me in front of my muse? Smile! Smile!
With that, we're off to Fontaine's sunken department store. It's been detached and used as a prison for Fontaine's followers. Now this leads to one of the many red flags that pops up during Burial at Sea. Rapture already has a perfectly serviceable prison, that being Persephone. Now as far as red flags go, this one is fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. Persephone appears in Bioshock 2, something that Ken Levine had next to no involvement in. Bioshock 2 isn't really considered much when it comes to the plot of Burial at Sea, or Bioshock Infinite in general. And considering how much Burial at Sea mucks with the first Bioshock, that's for the best. Plus, we've already played through Persephone in Bioshock 2. Still, having some form of acknowledgement of it would have been nice. One line from Booker would have been more than enough. Something like Persephone was full, so Ryan sank Fontaine's department store to use as a prison for his goons. The walking simulator portion is now over. Skyhooks are present, which is interesting. That wasn't in Rapture before.
Skyhook? You mean the air grabber? Kids use them to ride around up on the pneumo lines.
Air grabber. Huh. Constants and variables.
Constants and what?
Never mind.
Which, okay, the mention of constants and variables. Besides, it was a gameplay addition in Infinite. Might as well make use of it here. On a positive note, no more 2-weapon limit. I would love to see this added into the base game. Granted, it's structured around the 2-weapon limit there. Adding that in later would have required a lot of tweaking. So even though they're plasmids here, these are Vigors from Infinite in how they behave.
Fucking Bronco, it's how the West was won. Fucking Bronco, a blast for everyone. Lift up your spirits, float and fly. Launch your burdens into the sky. Fucking Bronco, the law of gravity defied.
You drink to replenish Eve instead of injecting them. Although there is an audio diary that talks about why some are made drinkable. Elizabeth makes use of tears here when the plot calls for it. We're allowed to make use of it in combat afterwards, even though she doesn't really mention she could do this. There's a lot of odd gameplay and narrative clashes here. The level design is more in line with the older Bioshock titles, instead of Infinite, which is mostly linear, branching off paths back to a central hub. It falls short of Bioshock 1, especially Bioshock 2, but it's better than most of the areas in the base game of Infinite. We move closer to our goal, getting Sally back. We have to flush her out of the Little Sister vent system by closing them off and raising the heat. This is pretty messed up, and how Elizabeth is so gung-ho about it, which calls upon a Big Daddy. Now the presence of a Big Daddy here is a major plot hole, but we'll come back to this later. The Skyhook does give more options in regards to fighting the Big Daddy. It turns out that Booker here is actually Comstock. In this universe, he caused the death of Anna as a baby. He seeks to forget, and the Lutesses send him to Rapture. Elizabeth did all this for revenge. With that, Comstock is killed by the Big Daddy, and part 1 ends.
Elizabeth. Child. I am so sorry.
No, you're not. But you're about to be.
Okay, so let's break down some of these implications to the plot. The more you think about the plot, the more it collapses on itself, just like the base game. They wrote themselves into a corner with this whole infinite universes idea. The major issue here is this being the last Comstock, which goes against what the base game said. There will either be no Comstocks left, or an infinite amount of them. The drowning either erased all Comstocks, or there are still an infinite amount of Comstocks remaining. And if there's still an infinite amount of Comstocks, that makes the ending of the base game completely pointless. Elizabeth didn't go through all these universes hunting down the Comstocks, because there's either none or an infinite amount. So this being the quote-unquote last Comstock makes no sense whatsoever. But it's nothing compared to what's to come in Burial at Sea Part 2.
This world values children, not childhood. There's a profit to be made, and men who make it.
This is where things truly fall apart. This is where aspects of Bioshock 1 get mucked around with. It does have its moments, and offers more gameplay-wise than the first Burial at Sea. No playing as Booker here, it's Elizabeth's time to shine. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise this creates a whole bunch of issues considering how powerful she is at this point. We start off with a walking simulator portion in Paris. I love this bit. It's so over the top and Disney-like. The Paris Elizabeth has imagined in her mind since being stuck in her tower in Colombia.
Mademoiselle?
Yes?
Quel est votre nom?
Elizabeth.
Pour vous, Elisabeth.
Oh, no. No, I couldn't. I can't accept...
Je vous en prie. J'insiste.
Oh, thank you.
Viens jouer avec nous, Elisabeth.
I'm sorry, Cosette. Next time, I promise.
Oh, dommage.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. Le temps est frais, le ciel est bleu, et vous êtes resplendissante.
One notable bit is the Baguette Boy here. A popular tweet about him in February 2022 brought out one of the developers who talked about the Baguette Boy. When placing NPCs, she found Paris a bit too static, so she used the NPC dancing animation from the base game where Elizabeth is dancing on the beach. Initially, it was two children dancing around the column, but there were clipping issues, so one child was replaced with a baguette, and voila, Baguette Boy. I do love the shift here from the cheerful Paris to reality.
Sally? Sally!
Come back! Come back!
Stop! Go away. It wasn't my fault.
Back to Rapture we go, and here's Atlas. So how are you going to play as a character who's basically a Time Lord at this point? Well, you take those powers away. The Big Daddy that killed Comstock at the end of part 1? Yeah, it also killed Elizabeth. Yep, the Elizabeth who could see everything, all possibilities through all the doors, couldn't see this coming. All of a sudden, Elizabeth is guilty over what she did to Sally. This whole convoluted plan to get revenge on Comstock. The Lutessas come in and give this explanation that basically sums up to, yeah, your powers are gone.
I need to go back. To fix what I broke.
Back to where she has no right to be.
Back to where she doesn't belong.
Doesn't belong? Wait, what do you mean?
Do you want to tell her brother, or shall I?
Because I died.
There are rules.
Even for one such as you.
She'll forget.
All the doors.
And what's behind all the doors?
All closed to her now.
She'll be just like the rest of us.
Forgetting the past.
The present.
The future.
I'd wager she won't even remember this conversation.
No Vita Chambers for you here. If you die, you get treated to a short cutscene as a game over. However, Booker chimes in on the radio. He's essentially her subconscious of what she saw through all those doors, which will come in handy when plot conveniences call for it. Yeah, you could see how dumb and convoluted this all is. Honestly, the Lutessas just showed up and said, "Fuck you, Elizabeth, we're taking your powers," because that could have been just as good. Dumb as that is, the Lutessas are wild cards, so at least it could have worked. Again, this is what happens when you write yourself into a corner when you run with the whole infinite universe idea. So keep it simple, kids. In that case, we have a fairly powerless Elizabeth, so what does that mean? Stealth time. And it kinda works. Early on, if you get caught, you can't take down enemies. Yep, not even a bullet to the head, because reasons.
That only seems to be knocking them back.
You're only gonna do real damage that way if they don't see you coming.
And despite the fact that a number of ex-Looking Glass talent worked on Irrational, this goes the visual stealth approach instead of being based around audio. The one that allows you to see through walls and have detection indicators. Granted, the main game didn't have this. Building it out to be something more like Thief would have taken a lot of time. This is a DLC that had a short turnaround time with a smaller team. There's some amusing AI breaking you could do here with the Peeping Tom plasmid. One upgrade allows you to stay invisible while standing still with no loss of Eve. Even if they bump into you, you could just turn invisible again and it throws them off. It's an easy way to gather splicers together to take them down in a pack.
When I find you...
Where'd you go?
There's a lockpicking minigame here as well, which is okay, quick and to the point, reminds me of the one from Oblivion. There's this bit early on here I love with the Ryan Learning Academy for Children, learning the ways of Rapture.
I'm here to tell you about Peter the Parasite. If I bake a pie, isn't it mine to enjoy? No, says Peter the Parasite, we all deserve a piece. If I earn a nickel, isn't it my right to buy candy if I see fit? No, says Peter the Parasite, you must only buy fruits and vegetables. If I can afford to see the doctor, is it my concern that others cannot? No, says the damnable parasite. We must all crowd our way into the physician's office. Ryan the Lion says, chew on that, you parasite.
Ryan the Lion. Was Ryan a furry? I know Rapture is pretty laissez-faire with everything, but I think Ryan would have drawn the line at this level of degeneracy. And say what you will about the philosophy that guides Rapture, but at least the kids are being taught that communism is a stupid idea. I do like the level setup here, a central hub that continues to fill up with more enemies each time we return to it. The level design here can be pretty decent. Vents give additional paths, the skyhook can be used to get the drop on enemies. However, it still uses the Bioshock Infinite style of gameplay, which falls short of the prior two titles with its approach, especially to Bioshock 2. One side quest gives us access to Fontaine's secret room of disguises.
Fontaine and Atlas. Son of a bitch.
Hell, once I was even a Chinaman for 6 months.
So due to the terrors, it turns out Suchong has been in cahoots with Fink and Columbia, sharing research. This was something that the main game did hint at. This does take away agency from both parties. However, it doesn't bug me as much as what is to come. Fixing up the Lutece machine, we make a brief trip back to Columbia. What follows is an absolutely infuriating case of retconning Daisy Fitzroy.
I've taken your counsel, and you done me good service, but I will not hurt the boy. I will see Fink and Comstock burn, but I will not hold the son to account for the deeds of his father.
You've misunderstood us.
We neither asked you to harm the child.
Nor did we promise that yours would be the hand that would set Comstock's world afire.
A famous man once said,
And a famous man shall say,
I may reach the mountaintop,
but I fear I shall never visit the valley below.
But you mean I won't live to see the... No.
It's up to you what matters more.
Your part in the play?
Or the play itself.
Someone is coming.
She'll arrive a girl.
She must leave a woman.
And what makes the difference between a girl and a woman?
Blood.
Your part in the play.
Or the play itself.
Turn her into a killer? How?
Give the girl no choice.
And she will be forced to make one.
It makes her a simple pawn in the grand scheme of things. It takes away that agency she had in the base game. What was the reason for this? Well, it seems that Daisy's action in the base game came across as racist to the gaming media, even though the Vox Populi was made up of a multitude of races. The implications seem more concerned about the color of her skin versus the quality of her character and actions. So it took those actions out of her control. I can't think of any good reason for doing this scene, besides trying to address these racism allegations made. There was absolutely no need for it. We get a section of exploring Fink's work on Songbird, the collaborations he had with Suchong, along with what caused the bonding of Elizabeth to Songbird.
Seems like Fink and Suchong were sharing their research.
Like the Luteces. Cross-reality collaboration. It must be a prototype or something.
Is it human?
Does it matter? I guess he was in some sort of fight. I waited there thinking, I don't know, that something would happen, but he just lay there, moaning. I couldn't just...
The lion with the thorn in its paw. So much for science.
Returning to Rapture has us dealing with Mr. Ryan for a time. Always nice to see him and hear him. I could listen to him read a phone book.
Time. You're not a hero. You're not even a parasite. You're just a room. And Andrew Ryan has no time for rooms.
And with cutscene and confidence, and knowing he's going to betray her, Elizabeth is captured by Atlas. Although I will say, one of the highlights of the DLC is the lobotomy scene. I really found myself wincing during it.
There's about a bit over 1/4 inch of bone between the pick and your prefrontal lobe. And that's where this little fella comes in.
I don't...
It was just a wee tap.
Kudos to the team of giving it such a weight from that first-person perspective. Now, this is where things really start to fall apart plot-wise. We're off to go get the ace in the hole for Atlas. It's here where the bonding of little sisters is discovered with the Big Daddy, thanks to Elizabeth and what she saw with Songbird. Now, there is the other bonding with the Alpha Series Big Daddies, which was in Bioshock 2. That's a different bonding system. But here with this bonding system, it takes away more agency of what came before. It was Elizabeth who played a role in how this bonding was discovered. But an even bigger issue? Go back to the end of Burial at Sea Part 1. The Big Daddy is protecting Sally, even though this type of bonding wasn't discovered yet, and that Big Daddy wasn't in Alpha series. So how the hell was this missed? Elizabeth returns to Atlas, gives him the ace in the hole, the would you kindly phrase, and through plot convenience, she sees all that will happen in Bioshock, knowing Sally and the Little Sisters will be safe, assuming Jack decides not to harvest them. With that, she dies with her injuries. Boy, that's really uplifting. What I hate so much about the plot here is how much it takes away from the first game. It's Elizabeth's actions that put so many wheels in motion. I was ready for a flashback of Elizabeth giving some key research to help Bridget Tenenbaum with her atom research. I was ready for Elizabeth to meet Andrew Ryan prior to building Rapture and have her whisper Rapture into his ear, or she would give the gift that Jack opens at the beginning of Bioshock. She accepts that Atlas will betray her. She gets killed off because, again, they wrote themselves into a corner. So these DLCs really don't take Bioshock 2 into consideration, and to be honest, that's for the best. Seeing how these plot additions take away from the first title here, I'm glad Bioshock 2 mostly avoids this treatment. But you know, they had other options they could have gone with this DLC. You have these infinite universes, why not roll with it? Why not have Booker and Elizabeth in Rapture, but have some very notable changes? How about in this universe, Ryan fakes his death instead of Fontaine? Or instead of little sisters, there are little brothers, a concept that was thrown around for Bioshock 2. Ken Levine loves to mess with the player. This could have been an easy way to do so. Take that knowledge we have of the first Bioshock and twist it. The beginning of the DLC could have been switching to one of the other Booker and Elizabeths we see during the Sea of Light scene at the end of the base game. Or you could have Booker and Anna, if they erased all the Comstocks, be one of the earliest citizens of Rapture. Have a self-contained story with the possibility of rubbing shoulders with some of the most well-known figures in Rapture. Run with the film noir style. These are just a couple of alternatives you could take in regards to crafting the DLCs, instead of trying to tie it all together with Infinite. Again, having this idea of infinite universes, just don't do it. It's so easy to have your plot collapse on itself. The world of the first two Bioshocks, fantastic. There was so much thought put into the narrative and the lore to jive with the gameplay. Columbia, not to the same extent, but there are elements of it. But it's once the elements of infinite universes come into play, you're going to be writing yourself into a corner very, very quickly. And it becomes oh so easy to poke holes in the plot, and suspension of disbelief flies right out the window. On the note of development, how much of it was thought up before the release of Infinite, a game that had very long and difficult development? Was this mandated by the publisher, or was it something the team wanted to do? So while there are welcome improvements to the gameplay, it still falls short of the first two titles. Stealth needs some more tweaking for a better feel. While it's nice to play as Elizabeth, a bunch of asspulls had to be made story-wise to make it work. And while it was nice to explore Rapture, making all these connections with the story of Infinite takes away from the original. Then again, you could always think of this as one of the infinite universes and just say the original games were in a different one. That's what I tell myself. In summary, go play Bioshock 2. It's the best Bioshock. Thanks for watching.
Are you in the know?
Human reproduction is vitally important to society, but there is no reason that the act of copulation cannot be pleasurable as well. Remember these tips. Sex is egotistical. Without self-esteem, those participating in coitus are revealed to be fraudulent, hypocritical animals. Ego is indispensable in the bedroom. Negotiate with your mate. Intercourse can be mutually beneficial to both parties. Set out expectations with your partner beforehand, outlining the services you will provide one another, and hold them to their side of the deal. Never forget, oral contracts and handshake deals are for starry-eyed gigolos. Always get it in writing. Your pleasure is your business. Remember, you come first. Nobody's going to keep an eye on your pleasure except you. Don't be left high and dry. Armed with this knowledge, go forth now and enjoy Sexual Congress the Rapture way.
Now you know.